Because I'm a co-creator, bruh. I'm a
Man, that's
co-creator.
so sliced.
All right, let's hold on. I need to fix my camera, and then we go live in 3, in 2, in 1. And what is up, everybody? Welcome to the amazing, current, edgy, popular Framecast. I am cool, right, fellow children? COPPA compliant children.
Oh my god.
Over the ages of 18 and up.
Oh man, that's just so.
Remember when, like, when saying "Welcome, children" was like a sure guarantee for monetization on YouTube, and now it's just like, no, you're gonna get banned. So yeah, what's up, everyone? Welcome to Framecast number 40, where we're talking about how faithful should remakes be. Today we're a little bit delayed by a day, but we're still the same Framecast. We're on a Wednesday though. So, Final Fantasy VII Remake. Have you played any of it? Have you seen any of it? What's your connection to Final Fantasy?
So to answer the last part first, I played the entirety of first game on Final Fantasy VII, the original, on the PlayStation. And as a dyslexic kid that needed glasses, that didn't get any glasses, playing on a CRTV at like 640 by 480 that could barely read to save his life. It was hard, right? When it came out on PC, it was so much easier. But yeah, I've played through the whole of it, and you know, I really, really enjoyed Final Fantasy VII for what it was. The narrative was really interesting. I love the whole, you know, the plot starts partway through rather than at the very beginning. You know, I'm always keen and interested on narratives like that. Full Metal Alchemist is another one that does that. So yeah.
And the remake?
Sorry, yes, you did ask about that.
Yeah.
So I've seen Jacksepticeye play the demo. I don't think Markiplier's played the demo. And then coming out this Sunday is a gaming and chill with me and Greg from Cephalon Squared, and I ended up buying him Final Fantasy VII Remake so we could actually do a gaming and chill on it. So we had good fun with that. And in all honesty, it's like one of the one games I wish I had a PS4 for. But the issue I have with it is that it's episodic, and like, I flat out hate episodic content. It didn't work for the Sin remake, which is a first-person shooter. Didn't work for Half-Life 2. You know, everyone keeps on saying Half-Life 3 confirmed. It's like, no, it's Half-Life 2 Episode 3, right? Yeah, but we never got that. I didn't like what they did with StarCraft, how they made that episodic, where you couldn't play all the races in a single expansion. You had to wait for each race's dedicated expansion. And the race I wanted to play was the fucking Protoss, and that was the last expansion, which really got on my nerves. And then, God, what was the other episodic game that I'm thinking of in my head? I forgot that now. But yeah, I don't like episodic content, and my inclination, wait, Final Fantasy VII Remake come out PC, and then get it, because like,
I mean, otherwise you have to buy an entire console for one single game, and you only play that one game on the console, and then what do you buy the console for?
It's worse than that, because you know, what has Sony just recently announced?
PlayStation 5.
Yeah. So I don't know how I don't think they have announced the number of episodes Final Fantasy VII will be. If they're going to stick anything like to the original, I can promise you it's much more than 3, right? The first game, which is Midgar, I could bash out in 2 hours on the PlayStation 1. The fact that that is now like 20 hours worth of content, they're obviously restructuring the narrative and thing. So they really have to work out like how many episodes this is going to be, because otherwise it'll be for fucking ever.
Yeah, well, maybe they like that. Like that's one thing where I agree with you on like I don't like episodic content that's intended to be episodic content because actually, okay, it might be a finer line than that because what you find most of the time when something starts out as an original idea and then they continue it because it has such a success, then a lot of times maybe the sequel was good, maybe the one after that is good, but after that they start like searching for ideas and it just becomes this hot mess where it's like, they're just grasping at straws. So maybe that isn't the greatest way of going about it, but I also really don't like the idea of like, we're going to make this episodic. So we're going to start off with this initial thing, and this initial thing is going to suck. And you're going to be like, you're going to be left hanging here. But that's the point, because we're going to make 10 more sequels, and you're going to love that when you have all 10. Oh, shit, the first one didn't sell well because it wasn't really well made. Oh, fuck. Anyone that was invested in the story? Well, good luck to you. We ain't making 9 more. And that's something where I think like if I have to think about like good episodic structures in any related piece of media, like the MCU jumps to mind. Although they had some movies which were literally felt like 2-hour-long advertisements for next movies, they also had some really, really good individual movies that had like a little hint of being connected to the rest of the universe. And like when it was pretty certain that this thing was gonna like see it through until like the end of Endgame, like it was a really great journey. But like that was only being done because like the individual entries in those episodes were movies on their own and movies on their own right. So I think that that's very important. If you want to do an episodic thing, like make sure that the thing feels like it's self-contained and good enough on its own.
Yeah, I agree entirely. And I think so they always planned phase 1 of the MCU, which was all the way up until Avengers, the first Avengers movie, right? Which was brilliant, right? But then when they saw the success of Iron Man 1 and 2, Captain America, the first Avenger, Thor, I don't think there were any others. And then it was the Avengers. It was just like, holy crap, this is just unfathomably fantastic. They went, right, let's go full ham on this. You know, they pulled out all the breaks. And the first 20 films, 21 film, 22 film, I can't remember how many films are on. You know, up to Endgame, you know, absolutely fantastic. Spider-Man Far From Home, I enjoyed, but you know, you know, I'd be happy if it didn't exist. But I just hope that they keep that up with, you know, the rest of it. I honestly don't know. I think the Marvel movies now are just going to trail off into nothing.
I think I think they're going to be like westerns, like how like last century, like westerns were like a really big genre, and people used to go to cinemas to watch those, and like big classics were like western movies, and now no one talks about them anymore because who cares? Who cares? And I think superheroes, like we saw like 20, 30 years ago that superhero movies were kind of like wacky and weird. And then like, I think for me, the Batman trilogy was like the first time that I was like, shit, this superhero stuff be good. Like,
what superhero movies are you talking about? 20 years ago? Are we talking like Spider-Man and the X-Men, or?
Well, we're talking like remember like the Batman and Robin thing where they were just like running around in where Batman just goes drunk driving and then gets that kind of stuff.
Okay, now I understand what you mean by the Batman trilogy. You're talking about the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy.
Yes. So like that was the first time. Like that was the first time that I was thinking like the Spider-Man, the original Spider-Man trilogy, and then the Batman trilogy, like those two trilogies in their own right were like, oh shit, like this can actually be something. And then the MCU came around and like everyone was hooked on it. And DC did like whatever DC does in the meantime. And now that Endgame has like rounded up, like I haven't seen a Marvel movie since because I'm like, okay, this story is done.
There's only been one. There's only been one, which was Spider-Man Far From Home. There hasn't been another one since.
Yeah.
So let's bring us back to Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah. So today we're talking about how faithful should remakes be. Why do we talk about that? Because Final Fantasy VII Remake just came around, and oh boy, this was going to be a very important release. because many people have been waiting on it. So it's no surprise that people are a little bit upset with some things. But maybe they should have seen this coming. I don't know. Anyway, so Final Fantasy VII, of course, game for the PlayStation or OG PlayStation. The remake, like the remaster, remake, whatever, like it's called remake, but a lot of people felt it was going to be like a remaster sort of situation. Was like speculated for a long time. Like the first time that something like this was shown, like Final Fantasy VII, but then with better graphics running on a better system, was actually shown off in May 2005 as a tech demo for the PlayStation 3. And that got a lot of people upset because like that thing looked so good and people were anticipating that to be a real game, and then they turned around and said like, oh no, we just did it as a demo, like we know you really want this to be like on this platform and way better and like upscaled, but no, we just did it as a demo to show you what we could do. So finally 15 years later, Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 1 drops, and of course a lot of people were like desiring to like jump back in on it. However, it's not the same game. It's not the exact same game.
To be honest, though, I don't have an issue with that. I like, to me, the important part of the narrative that you should keep is of the game, of the original. The important part should be the plot, right? It shouldn't be necessarily the gameplay, because I mean, we've seen, oh god, what's the name of the damn thing? How many Final Fantasy games have you played yourself?
I have only played like 1 or 2 at most, but not like very dedicated. So
Sure.
like, I'm rather a novice on this.
So I played 7 to death. 8, I got bored very quickly. Right?
Yeah.
It felt very much like 7, but I didn't realize that 8 was not going to continue the narrative of 7. I didn't realize that they were completely independent narratives, right? And I couldn't get on with like the characters, I couldn't get on with the plot, so I stopped 8 quite quickly. 9 I never played, but I've heard good things about it. 10 I've never played, you know, so on and so forth. 11 was a PC MMO, which I was told wasn't that great. 12 I watched a friend play it, and that looked interesting, but the amount of grind between each narrative component was massive. 13 I did play. I played a lot of. I enjoyed the narrative component. I disliked the way that they westernized a lot of the names, and because it just completely derailed some of the important like translation and things like this. And oh shit, what was the I stopped when it hit the open world. Oh, it's grindathon time now. I'm like, nope, I'm gonna stop that now. 14 I played quite a bit of, but again the narrative just sucked in the in the middle part of the vanilla expansion. 15 I watched a friend play for half an hour to an hour, and literally the entire thing was driving. There was no combat whatsoever. We were bored. We stopped playing that. And there isn't a 16 yet. So looking at the way Final Fantasy the Final Fantasy experience has trended, like, you know, how it's evolved and things, I do feel that Square Enix has always wanted to take it along the lines of this third-person action game where you're running around hacking and slashing. You still have the party dynamic and things, but it's important to have a combat experience that is easy to gel with. They wanted to get rid of this whole turn-based element. They didn't want people sat around waiting for shit to happen. So I appreciate that they've taken away that, right? And now we have this nice, smooth combat system, right? The story elements, I mean, it's nice to be able to actually tell what gender Jesse is, you know, from a glance, let alone here's 7 polygons. This comprises the character's body. Like, you know, what was all that about? Yeah, it's just nice to see the world expand, you know, and I think that the direction that they took it in is a much better way than what it was, God knows how many years ago.
obviously, regardless of like the graphics and like the overall quality and like what you're able to do with computing power, compared to so many years ago, it's like if you there was only a limited amount of like story or like gameplay or like game mechanics that you could convey within the technical capabilities of like the PlayStation 1. So like bringing that exact game over to like the PlayStation 4 and then upping like all the graphics and all the surroundings and upping the audio is like you'd be still left with something bare. It's kind of like you kind of want to expand on it. Now like one thing that like the things that people have been kind of like upset with is because like this thing was called a remake, and I think that a lot of people had the expectations that because it'd been shown off before so many years ago and like people were still like passionate about it, um that this was going to be complete. This was just going to be like taking this game, up all the graphics, make it all better, and boom, here we go. So like people have been saying like this game is neither a remaster, remake, nor a reboot. It's just a sequel to the original game. Thus, Final Fantasy VII Part 2. It's not a like they say that like a remaster is like using it's like the same story with the graphics updated. A remake is the same story with graphics just remade from scratch, and then a reboot is a different story and character design completely changed. So they would say this is more probably like along the line. Well, they're not saying that's along the lines of reboot, but I would probably like say this would be close to like a reboot rather than like a remake. With people saying like this is not exactly along the lines of like the original game. However, is it a problem? Like, is it a problem when you're like remaking games or like mastering or rebooting games? Like, is it a problem that like you change something about the game? Because I don't know.
I personally don't think this is an issue because, like, the game wouldn't survive if it was the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like you'd have to be naive as okay. Here's a perfect example, right? Warcraft 3 Reforged, literally the same thing as the original, but just better models, right? Better lighting and things like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tanked in reception because it wasn't what was advertised.
Mm-hmm.
If you advertise Warcraft 3 like now, no one would want it, right?
No.
So the whole premise of the better interactive cinematics, the over the shoulder stuff, as opposed to the camera's way up there,
Mm-hmm.
right? That was a huge driving factor. It would enhance the narrative, right? Likewise, there were games. There was Duke Nukem Forever. Right. Okay. So the relevance of Duke Nukem Forever is that it took so long to come out. When it eventually did come out, it was a huge flop because the technology was way behind. Right. The graphics were mediocre. The jokes were okay. The plot was never really something people were interested in when it came to Duke Nukem. Like, one of the reasons why Crysis was such a hit when it first came out is because that was the PC breaker, right? It would destroy PC because the graphic settings had to be through the roof, right? Yeah. So you have to stick with what is relevant, right? You know, look at God, I remember years ago. I played the Ultimate Spider-Man game on PC, and I absolutely loved it. I thought it was the best Spider-Man game ever. It's unbeatable, so on and so forth. I then proceeded, like, I don't know, 5 to 10 years later, I proceeded to play it again. And it was trash. Because when it came out, it was using new hot technologies that just, were relevant at the time. It was using game design techniques that were relevant at the time. Side quests weren't a thing. So swinging through, floating in the air hula hoops to beat Johnny Storm, the Human Torch, it just that's just how it is. Just how it is now. I was like, doing races as Spider-Man, it made sense. But now it's just like, no, that's not relevant to the plot. That's not relevant to the narrative. That's a side quest.
Yeah.
Side quests didn't exist back then.
No.
Right?
No, I definitely think that like the time in which something comes out really like gives a stamp on like how you feel about it, because I remember a lot of games, especially like the 2D games. Like 2D games were the games that I kind of grew up with to play with before then like the 3D kind of came in with. I think Lego Star Wars was like my first 3D game with like, or Super Mario 64 maybe. But I'm looking back sometimes at videos of like these old 2D games, and I'm looking at them. I'm like, yeah, I remember me playing this, but I remember this looking way better in my mind because
Yeah.
that's what it was at the time, and also fixed camera angles. I was playing like on the DS recently. I picked up my DS again. I was playing like Lego games on there. And I remember like feeling like those were just exactly the same as the console games, but they just have a fixed camera angle. Like the models look all janky as fuck, and it's like, yep, this is definitely this. Yeah. So like we don't have fixed camera angles anymore in like most games. That used to be like the standard thing. Fixed camera angles. We don't have that anymore. So it's like a lot of like if you're gonna remake something, you have to like change it to the time, to the present time. And I also feel that like if you're gonna put a creative team into creating like a game, they're also gonna want to have like their own input on it. I feel because like if you're just being told to like, hey, you're gonna have to like take this game and make it like with new stuff, but just make the exact same, nothing else. It's like you're just a converter at that point. And I don't think that like there's much of anything of any passion in like just converting something. I think that you want to like use this technology that you have to create more. Now, allow me to toss out an argument kind of in favor of rebranding, rebooting. And I think that this kind of comes down to like the Modern Warfare reboots that like last year we had Modern Warfare, now we have Modern Warfare 2 campaign remastered that are coming out. At first when I saw these things, I was really like kind of like weirded out by it. I was like, why the hell would I want to like play this game again? Why would I want to buy this game again when I still have it for my PlayStation 3? Like that's so stupid. Like you're just not even creating something new. You're literally selling me the same shit again. However, what I have noticed is that if I go back to the PlayStation 3, it's like not a lot of people still have a PlayStation 3. So if you want to like see that story, if you want to like play that story, if you want to play that campaign, because oh boy, those Call of Duty campaigns are the most intricate, well-written campaigns out there. But like if you want to experience that, or if you want to like play the multiplayer, especially, like multiplayer is dead almost there because it's no longer current. And like for a lot of people that don't have PlayStation 3s, which are not being made anymore, like it's no longer available to them. So like having a remaster, especially from like older games, or people that want to like go back and experience this franchise. If you started off from day one with like Final Fantasy, and like you grew up along the platforms that it released on, then like it's been an amazing journey. It's been amazing from the start to end. But if you want to go back to Final Fantasy and like you start up with like the first bunch of them, they're all gonna look old, outdated. You're just gonna be like, what the hell am I playing? So like being able to like play the same thing that people enjoyed then, but like on a newer console. Actually, there is some merit to it. There is some merit to like the remasters kind of situation, the remake situation, where it's like we have this game, which is kind of too old to like really be played well now, and it's like too niche, and it's like on an old unsupported system anymore. So let's remake it. Let's make it like look good again and throw it out. So I think that might be the argument for it. Though then again, like what you said with like the systems that were used at the time will still feel dated. So why not up that?
Yeah, so I want to lean towards Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3, the recent ones that came out in the last year and a bit. So I played Resident Evil 2 as the first Resident Evil game I'd ever played on PlayStation.
Yeah.
And I hated it, right? So one of the important things to know about Resident Evil is that when you were playing, you could either shoot directly in front of you at a 45-degree angle upward or at a 45-degree angle downward. That was it. There was no range at all. It was just straight on, down, or up. Right? And it was painful as hell. You also had the fixed camera angles. You can't get away with fixed camera angles now.
Oh, no.
Like, you just can't. People will destroy you if you put fixed camera angles in now. unless it's a cutscene, but that's a given. And yeah, it was painful. Like if I was to play, I just watched Markiplier play both games,
Mm-hmm.
but if I was to play those and had the same fixed camera angles, had the same um, you know weird janky ass controls, I would just instantly call it trash and just not bother with it.
Mm-hmm.
But they were able to do so many cool things. Like you were able to get better perspectives on signs. You were able to make the world feel more alive, right? You were able to do so much more with the environment. And I personally think that they are some of the best games that Capcom has released in the last few years.
No, I can see that. Now we're talking a lot about like game mechanics and like the changing of the cameras. Um, how do you feel about narrative changes? Because Final Fantasy Remake had that as well. I haven't played the Modern Warfare remaster because I haven't played like the Modern Warfare game. I haven't played it yet. I don't know if they made any changes, but then again, like what cares about story in Call of Duty? But like, how do you feel about like making narrative changes when you're doing a remake of a game?
It depends entirely on change. I don't. I'd love to just say, oh, it's good, it's bad, there's no real easy answer to this.
Mm-hmm.
And like, yeah, it just really depends. Like with Warcraft, so actually one thing not exclusive to the Warcraft 3 Reforged, right? Blizzard Entertainment are synonymous with retconning stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right? So in Warcraft 3, the Frozen Throne, you play as the Blood Elves who go to Outland. And one of the quests you have to do is shut off all these demon gates in an area called Hellfire Peninsula,
Mm-hmm.
right? So sorry, these portals, right? Dark portals. You have to shut them all off. Now, after the game, years down the line, World of Warcraft, the Burning Crusade, which was the first expansion, came out 2007, 2006, something like that. It had you going to Outland as your player character,
Mm-hmm.
but they changed the entire environment. So yes, you had Hellfire Peninsula, but all the portals were everywhere else. There was a portal in Zangamarch. There was a portal in Nagran. There was a portal in Thousand Needles. Sorry, Thousand Spires? Shit, what's the... No, Blaze Edge Mountains, right? They put the portals in other parts of Outland, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not a huge problem, but it's how they changed it, right? They also changed the background plot of Gul'dan. Is they changed the background plot of Nazul. They changed the background plot of... They changed a lot. Demons can no longer die outside of the Twisting Nether. Oh wait, that demon died outside the Twisting Nether. He's a bad guy, So they do it all the time. It's not the end of the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, with Final Fantasy VII's remake, I personally feel that this game is not for new people, right? It's for everyone. I think people would become complacent and bored if they played the remake and know exactly what's going to happen and it plays out exactly like the original.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this would potentially hurt sales for future episodes.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is good to breathe some fresh life into the narrative, but I don't think they should make huge sweeping changes, right? The changes that they have made, and I'm aware of some of them, I do not consider groundbreaking.
Yeah. Well, I I agree on the part of like if you're gonna allow leniency in like changing game mechanics and gameplay parts and like the way you do camera movement and all that sort of stuff, is like, why not allow changes in like the story and the narrative? It's like it's also a part of the game, and as we've discovered many times when talking about like lore within Warframe, for example, it's like a lot of people like care much more about how things look than the story that's played out for them. It's not as important as like the holy lore people think that lore is like it's just another part of the game experience. And I think a lot of people tend to like hype it up to be a lot more like this entire game is about like the story, nothing matters. It's like, well, not really. Like a lot of people will also just play story games, don't bother about the story, they just like go for the experience to see every like environment and do like the interaction that they can do and like level up and battle and whatever the game provides. So
Well, I do think it's important when it comes to something like Final Fantasy, which is an RPG,
mhm,
right? I'd argue more that um, Final Fantasy VII Remake is a third-person action game, right, with some RPG elements, but the plot of Final Fantasy VII was the driving thing,
mhm.
right? So I wouldn't necessarily say that there's an easy way to make a comparison with games like Warframe, but I certainly see where you're.
It most certainly plays a much bigger part than with games like Warframe, where lore is way an afterthought kind of in that game. But I do feel that like, especially when you're trying to market a game these days, or just to market a game well, especially these days, it's like um, lore isn't as important with any genre of game anymore as it used to be, because like back in the day, like the further back you go, the lower the graphics become, the more basic the game mechanics become. So like having a good story, especially in the days when like computer games were just like lines, when you could just like where you had these RPGs and like text-based games, um like their story is super important because there are no graphics, there are no game mechanics really, other than like choosing different decisions. But as these things grow more and more and more, they become more and more important. And I know of people that will just play story games because they look good. And like right now, it's like you're trying to market a game to like a general market, and if the general market cares less and less about the story itself being as exactly the same as it used to be so many years ago, then like you should like you it should be allowed to be experimented with and played around with and like given a new input and maybe a new fresh take on it that might explore things deeper or might fit the game mechanics better. So um, I do agree on that part, that it's like, yes, we like, they can definitely make changes. I would say on that, like, you should never judge changes on whether they're good or bad, in the sense like, oh, they can only change it if it's good or if it's bad. It's like, no, like people, like either everyone should be able to change, either it should be able to change or not, because like you can't be who's going to be the arbiter of whether it's good or bad. That being said, when it comes to narrative changes, as you're talking about, like that people can just freely, like you were kind of like, oh yeah, they should be able to change that. Like they should be able to change some things. I don't mind when they like retcon a little bit. Um, I do want to bring up like, remember the Framecast with about Picard where they retcon some things and you were kind of upset by that.
The difference is there's a retcon and then there's a telling of the story again,
mm-hmm.
right? So with Picard, it was supposed to be a sequel to the entirety of the Star Trek narrative. But then when it doesn't abide by its own rules, then it's like, what the fuck's going on? With this, I mean, to me, there's a difference between a rule, which
Mm-hmm.
is typically something that has happened, versus a remake. I mean, like if they were to remake TNG, right, the next generation
Mm-hmm.
now, with different cast, same characters, if they made Lost in Space, right? Barely faithful at all to the original series,
Mm-hmm.
right? Barely. Like I think the only things that they carried over are the names of the Robinsons,
Mm-hmm.
the genders of the Robinsons, The gender of Don. Shit, what was his last name? I can't remember. He was the pilot in the original. Don West, that was his name. He was the pilot in the original. In this, he's in the remake, he's a mechanic, right? In the reboot, he is a mechanic. Like, Dr. Smith completely changed gender. Completely changed. Like, her name is just not Dr. Smith at all. Like, they're not alone, right? The robot is an alien, right? They've changed so much. But Lost in Space is one of the best sci-fi shows of this generation, right? And it's not barely faithful at all to the original. Barely. I have zero issue with that.
Yeah, I can understand that. I just wanted to see like how you'd stand on that, given that like that Framecast like narrative was really important and changes couldn't be made, and this time you were a little bit more lenient. But I can understand if it's in the same, if you're telling a story and you're continuing on that story in the same universe, in the same plot line, and then you're just like, oh yeah, the things that we said before don't count anymore. Then it's like, then why should I believe any of the stakes that you're bringing up? Because like, if you're just going to cross things out, but if you do a remake, if you do a retelling, if it's like, we're doing this thing again, it's like, you can change things because it's like a retelling. It's not the same thing. So yeah, overall, I think that like a lot of this just comes out of, well, maybe people like being, I don't know. It just sounds a lot like the Warframe thing, where people just tend to put their identity towards something so much, and like, oh, this becomes part of me, and if it's not like what I want, especially when this thing was like seen in 2005 and people were really nuts about it. Imagine if people held onto this for like 15 years, like, I can't wait for this thing, and it better be exactly as I want to, and then like it will never be exactly as they want to, and they're going to be mad about it.
I do genuinely think that people need to pull their proverbial heads out of their asses, because you can't do that. Like, I absolutely love the Legacy of Kain franchise, right? I don't know if I've made that clear at all ever, but I'm very sure today, if I was to go play Soul Reaver 2, oh god, I fucking hate Blood Omen 2, we'll ignore that one. Or Defiance, like, I would want to throw up in my mouth, right? Especially Defiance, because that had a fixed camera angle, right? But I freaking loved the narrative of what you call it, the Legacy of Kain franchise. I absolutely adored the voice acting of Simon Templeman, who plays Kain, and Michael Bell, who plays Raziel. Like, Jesus Christ, it like, you are voice acting, sexing my ears to please don't ever stop. Like, if they swapped those actors out, I would be sad as hell, right? But they would have to do a damn good job to find viable replacements. It's the same with Mark Hamill as the Joker, or Kevin Conroy as Batman. Sorry, going off topic. The point is, if I played those Legacy of Kain games again, I'm sure I'd be like, oh my god, this is jank as shit. This is horrible. Oh my god, what the hell were they thinking? And I would want them to massively spruce it up, because I remember Final Fantasy VII well. I'm sorry, you have to basically rebuild it from scratch.
Yeah, no, like seriously, if you look at the comparisons of like the cutscenes right now as well, it's like, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. But I believe it's just such an identity thing, and like I know that games and like franchises and like they're created in such a, well, they serve a purpose in such a way that you can like escape towards them, and then you can like identify a little bit with them, so you can like meet people that like love the same thing, and like that's a great thing that you can all like share the same thing that you like. But more and more these days, I'm just seeing people that just go nuts about like they just have this thing confused where they're like, this thing is part of me now, and like if you insult this thing, you insult me, and if this thing does well, then I do well, and if this thing does bad, then I do bad, and it must always be the way I see it because I know it best because it's part of me. It's like, no. It's just the thing that you don't have any relation to. Like that's something which like I've also fallen victim to, where like it's so easy. I don't know whether that's because of like the way that like we're built to interact with people because or things because like the things that we interact with normally in a natural situation would be like people that like would be right in front of us, that we tend to like feel try to build up like friendly relationships with them and like see them as persons or so. But like I've had it too where I would go to like where I would like see institutions or game companies or games as like friends almost, where I'd be like, oh yeah, no, I'll help them out, and they'll probably help me out, and like, oh, I know them so well, and I know what's best for them, and I want to help them. It's like, no, it's just a game. It doesn't care about you. It's just a
So
thing.
one question I have is, where are you seeing this negativity? Are you seeing it in content creators, or are you seeing it in things like the Metacritic?
I've mostly seen it when it comes to like online posts, content creators, and Jim Sterling also made a video about it, like talking about like the reactions that people had gotten. I haven't checked the Metacritic score yet. We can actually go do that right now.
Yeah.
But it's mostly just like online people on Reddit as well, just being like, this is not, and it's like, yeah, dude, like relax. It's just a game. The old one still exists.
So on Metacritic, 3.5 thousand people have voted on it with the score of 8.
That is pretty good.
Yeah, that's really good. So wait,
Here we go.
generally favorable reviews based on the, but it only says user reviews. There's only 1,060 that are positive, 169 that are mixed, 400 that are negative. How on earth does it get 3,000 from that? That's just
Like I have one for the play. Well, I have one here that says 2,620 positive, 245 mixed, and 619 negative. So that amounts to over 3,000 here. 3,004. Yeah, that does make sense.
How am I? What? What did? Hold on. Let me see your.
So.
Oh, okay. That's weird. But oh, maybe it's other languages. Duh.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, overall, like it's, again because like it's a lot like within the plot kind of like situation. It's like it's such a minor thing. Oh my god. The thing is, with most of these things, where people tend to get really upset about and really vocal online, like what you find is that like it's such like a small amount of people that really care so much, and people from the outside are just looking in. They're like, yeah, well, honestly, like this is my point when it comes to most of like video game or media or like film or whatever, like criticism where people get really riled up about it. It's like, yeah, dude, I can see your point. Like the way that you're putting this out, the way that you're putting this forward, you were expecting this thing to be exactly the same as like the original. It said remake on the box. You thought it was a remake, exactly 1-to-1. You're expecting the story to go this way, and it didn't, and you're mad about that. I can see that. But dude, it doesn't really matter all that much. It's just the game, and like that's like I just feel it's like such a big part of like people just like clinging on to something with so much and not like seeing the bigger picture of like, hey, this game looks so much better. Like maybe the direction that they're taking this in could be very interesting. You're not doing the exact same thing. Maybe right now you don't know what's gonna happen. Bringing it back to like the superhero movies thing that we were talking about. I've gotten so tired of all the remakes where like every single time we're telling the same story over and over again. I've seen Batman's parents die so many times. I am getting so sick and tired of it. I want new shit. I want to see new things. That's what I loved about like the MCU. All of a sudden, here we go, continuous story, new things, and it's like,
oh look, Spider-Man without his fucking origin story.
Oh yes, baby, please. And of course, I get a little bit upset that like Aunt May isn't the same Aunt May as she was in the very first Spider-Man movie, and she's getting younger over time. And now all of a sudden, it's like it's a different act. It's like, but it doesn't matter because it's a really cool movie, and I like to see it.
Oh god! So like, I'm looking at this now, and I'm looking through some of these reviews. Right, So one review I'm reading here from the Great Review. What the fuck name is that? Fantastic right up until the last 2 chapters, where it turns into a stupid anime trope filled with fan action. The last 2 chapters are irredeemable and basically ruin the entire game. Honestly, 10 out of 10 for the parts where they remade/expanded on the original. 1 out of 10 for the stupid anime editions. For the stupid anime editions are garbage writing for the end. I think that's supposed to be and garbage writing at the end. Good job, garbage writing. And they go from like 10 out of 10 to 1 out of 10. I'm like, first off, you understand the main character is wielding a 6-foot buster sword. Something no one could physically do. It is going to be so damn heavy. Well, unless you're hench as hell, but even so, like Barrett would be able to lift it, but he'd still need 2 hands. Like, the sword is unrealistic. And you're telling me that's not what's got anime as hell. Barrett, like, his shoulders are as big as his head. Again, completely unrealistic. Yet you're telling me that's not anime as hell, right? It's like,
It's again the it's either a 10 out of 10 or it's a 1 out of 10. It's either all good or it's all bad, because there's only this binary line where it's like it's good or it's bad, and I need to rally all my passion behind it. And like I don't know whether this has always been a thing. I don't know if this will always be a thing. I don't know if it's like enhanced right now because we can now see it all, because everyone can talk about it and share their opinions online and like jump in echo chambers and be like, Urgh! But like, yeah.
Well, here's another one. This remake is an insult to those of us who have been waiting 20 plus years to finally get an updated version of the game, which is what everyone wanted. Suddenly, the game changes the entire plot, and I suppose to shit the bed, yeah. For any future installments, and everyone praises it for being meta and deep. I'm so sick of the whole, this is good because it subverts your expectations. It wasn't good when Star Wars did it, and it's not good now, right? Well, Star Wars didn't subvert your expectations. Star Wars just ruined itself.
Yeah,
right?
Well, I think that's a very important distinction that you made earlier on, because that is the big difference between like the Star Wars sequels and like this. It's like it's not in the same line, it's not in the same timeline, it's not in the same universe. It's a remake, so it's like a brand new thing based on the original. But it's not like, oh, then we did this, then we did that, then we did this other thing, which doesn't make any sense given the previous offense. It's like I think that's a really, really big thing. And yeah, like Star Wars, I'm just not gonna count the sequels. I'm just not gonna watch them anymore. If we do like a watch through, I'll just watch 1 through 6, and I'll be happy as fuck. But
yeah. Like, so the upshot of Star Wars, right? Like, there was no subversion of expectation with the prequels because they had to get to episode 4, right? We had to end up with Luke being looked after by Obi-Wan and Leia ending up in the hands of the Organas, right? And Yoda had to still be alive, and Anakin had to become Darth Vader, right? I mean, anyone that couldn't see Palpatine was Sidious, was blind as hell. I mean, you can see that from literally the very first episode. He sounded exactly the same for a start, right? What?
Well, actually, like, I hope that this...
Did you really not?
So I watched the Star Wars movies when I was like 10, 12 years old.
Oh, fair enough.
And then I watched from at first I played a Lego Star Wars game on PlayStation. PlayStation 2 was my favorite console game. I loved that. We played that so much that the disc broke. And then we started watching the Star Wars movies, starting at 1 to 6.
Oh yeah, then there's no way on
and
earth you're gonna know.
and then it was all like, oh yeah, it's fun. All of a sudden I was like, oh, he's that. Like you didn't know. And then
Yeah.
like I remember a couple years later, 4 years later, I rewatched it again, and then all of a sudden like I saw that he was, and then like I saw like some of the things that he did. It was like the second rewatching it, I saw so much more than I saw like years ago. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, this is so good. And
Uh,
like the second appreciation, because like the first time as a kid I was just watching it for like the sword fights, and then like the second time watching the story is like it's so good. And then like now I'm watching it, I'm like, yeah, the acting in the prequels leaves something to be desired. So like probably I should have stopped watching after the second time. But
apart
no,
from Liam.
Liam Neeson was great. But like this is like the thing when it comes to like the Star Wars continuation of the same story. When it comes to like the Force healing, is like, well, that would have been great if like Liam Neeson had it.
Oh my god.
It's
Have
like
you seen have you seen the how it should have ended for Rise of Skywalker?
no, I haven't. Tell me.
Oh, I will link it to you because it's just like, hold on. If I've got all these powers, then why can't I just do this stupid bullshit thing? And
Mm-hmm.
it's absolutely fucking hilarious.
Well,
But
like an interesting thing is I've actually been reading Aristotle on like the ethics and like what is true, like like what is happiness, like that's what the book's about. That's what his thing is about. And he describes happiness as like finding like uh, the mean. So find the mean to yourself. Like that is the ultimate thing. The ultimate goal in life is to like like happiness is the ultimate goal in life, because everything you do ends up in like you wanting to be happy. Like you do something in order to you may like do something to earn money so that you can like buy something so you can be happy having it. So you might like learn something so you can get smarter, so you can get smarter than other people, so you might have more like honor, and that makes you more happy. So happiness is the ultimate goal. But what is happiness? What is the right way of acting virtuous? And the right way of acting virtuous is acting it's like acting pursuing the mean. So not doing the excess and not doing like the opposite of the excess, like not doing
so
too
the
little,
average.
not doing too much, but not necessarily average. Because like let's say that like the least amount of food you can eat is like two. You can eat two pieces of food, and the most amount of food you can eat is like 10. Then like one would say if you would go with the average, the mean would be like 6. But if you were to like say like you should always eat 6 amounts of foods because that's the average, that might be too much for a person, or that might be too little for a person, depending on like their body size and their needs. So
So
it's
what do
like,
you mean the mean?
so you should do what is not too little and not too much for yourself. You should find the mean to you.
But that's the average.
No, it's not the average, because like if
Mean
I,
is the average.
but yeah, find the average, but to you. So not like the numerical average, but the average to you.
Right.
So maybe for me, like eating 3 plates of food is not too much and not too little. It's just perfectly fine for me. But eating 3 plates for like a 5-year-old kid is way too much. So for them, it would be like half a plate or 1 plate, because that would be not too little and not too much.
So it's finding the right balance that's best for you.
Yeah, finding the
Right.
balance to you, like the mean to you, not the mean on like it's to you. And like
Right. I'm not quite sure if this is a translation issue, but like that does not make sense in English. So, but we're talking
yeah.
about
Anyway,
making sure you have the right balance.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Finding the balance to yourself, finding the mean to you. So if you look at a perfect piece of art, or if you look at like a great story, like what Star Wars was, because Star Wars amazing, like especially the original trilogy is fantastic. Prequels a little bit worse, sequels, like if you find a good piece of art, like it hits that balance. Like if you were to subtract something from it, it'd be worse. If you were to add something to it, it'd be worse. So if you round up a story, like whatever you're gonna add to it is gonna make it worse. And that's, I think, a perfect case what we saw with like Star Wars, is that like they were adding to it where like there needn't be added to, and it just made things worse, and people didn't like it.
Yeah. I mean, so I don't think that a lot of the complaints had for Final Fantasy VII Remake are justifiable. I can't really talk a great deal. I've not played it. I can't play it, right?
Mm-hmm.
but from what little I have seen, I would love to play it. Right? I played a lot of like, and if these people are genuinely, for lack of tact, butthurt over the differences between the original and the remake, then just go play the original. It's on Nintendo Switch, as that one review said. Just go play the original again, right? If you want the new fancy graphics, well, you have to accept the changes in plot. You have to accept the changes in combat. You have to accept all the changes, right? Because this game isn't made for you. This game isn't made for the individual one or two people that, well, okay, it's hundreds of people. You know, it isn't made for the people that absolutely adore the original. It's made for people that like the original and the new players who have not experienced the original, right? Because let's face it, this day and age, it's the kids that buy the computer games, right? It's the people that are unattached from responsibilities like having children or a significant other that's not a gamer or anything like that, that play these video games. And I know for a fact that the majority of my friends that have played Final Fantasy VII to death will more than likely not pick up Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Yeah. Well, I mean, during this time, it might also be more people than just children, since most people are at home now. But it's like, I don't necessarily think that, like, seeing games is like, games are made for me, or games are made for this person. It's like, it's just people made a game. That's what they did. They may have had a target audience in mind, which most of the time they do. But people made a game, and you can choose to like it, you can choose to not like it. But the game doesn't owe you shit, and you don't owe the game shit. You don't have to buy the game. You don't have to play the game. Like, the game doesn't have to sell you anything. It's like, the game doesn't have to do anything for you. Like, you're just two separate entities that might meet if you like it, but you can also just choose to go away from it. And definitely, at first I went into this thinking like, like, there might be something to it, because like, if people were like thinking, if they were saying like, this is going to be exactly the same, but I don't think they've really said it that was going to be exactly the same. And especially like with what you said, towards like a rebranding of like telling the story again and making changes to like mechanics are super necessary. So, and in the same line, we can also like see narrative changes, because narrative is just another like game element as is like visuals, game mechanics, and environments. It's like, yeah, like of course they should be able to like play around with it. So I definitely think that like it's not as a big deal as people make it out to be.
Yeah, I mean, like, as I said, I'm actually I'm very interested in playing Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3 had I not watched Markiplier play through all of them. I mean, there's a multiplayer mode for Resident Evil 3, and I'm interesting. But like single player games, it's just like, if Resident Evil 2 and 3 maintained the controls and the camera and all that stuff from their originals, oof, those would have tanked.
Yeah.
They would have tanked so goddamn hard.
But also, remember when we played like Dead Rising, and like the game is kind of decent, and like it sometimes looks like a current game, but like there are so many mechanics which are just like, wow, they are old. This game is agey. So like, it changes so fast. Now, one thing which might have like helped people if they were expecting this to be the exact same thing, but like they didn't know until they started playing it, so they started buying it, is if they would actually be able to like see people talk about it, reviews about it, watch people talk about it. But one thing that like Jim Sterling pointed out in his video, and something which I've seen a lot of people also, like, not just with regards to this, but many other like games or movies, talk about with regards to like talking about new things that are coming out, or even like Final Fantasy, which has been out for years. Spoilers. Like, a lot of people are like they do not want to see any spoilers. They will hate on the video if it's got any spoiler material, if it says anything about they might see. So, oh god, no, I would never want to see spoilers of anything. And there's like I feel like especially the more I've gotten into like the online world, it seems like spoilers have become such a like hot button thing where everyone's like, "Oh my god, don't spoil something! How dare you spoil something? Spoiler warning! Spoiler warning! Spoiler warning!" How do you feel about spoilers?
It depends entirely. They are becoming more and more impossible to avoid.
Mm-hmm.
As Jim Sterling said in that video you linked me to this morning, they are like some of the spoilers are a huge part of everyday culture. I mean, there's a spoiler for the anime Cowboy Bebop, which is literally the end, the end summed up in 2 words .com, right? And you know, a friend of mine, he would just link people to that, and you know, it's literally just a screenshot of what happens,
Mm-hmm.
right? With a tune playing in the background, right? You know, like there's memes of what you call it? Was it Dumbledore dies and shit like that, where like there's Tom Hiddleston dressed up as Loki in a limo. You go, Dumbledore dies.
Yeah.
You know, it's just shit like that.
You know
I
the car
mean,
stickers where people say like, look at the spoiler on my car," and it's like like stickers on the back that says Snape kills Dumbledore. It's
oh
just like
really? I haven't seen that,
I put
but
a 6 spoiler on my car, and it's just that cheap spoilers.
but the but yeah, it's just like, yeah, you can't avoid spoilers. I knew people that would start like la 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 really loudly when they
Mm-hmm.
started hearing stuff about Game of Thrones because they hadn't watched Game of Thrones yet. I would, you know, whenever like a Marvel movie or whatever would come out, like uh, Infinity War and Endgame, like I went to go see them the opening weekend. To be fair, I mostly go see films on the opening weekend
Mm-hmm.
because that's, you know, just something I do. I enjoy going to the cinema and things. I probably spent way too much money on the cinema. I have no idea. But yeah, so it's like it is what it is, yo.
How do you personally like handle spoilers? Like, are you like, do you completely avoid all social media when something new comes out? Like, how long do you expect to care about? Like, do you even care
So
if someone
so
spoils something?
so there's a couple of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's what is considered a spoiler,
Mm.
right? And what is like plot relevant,
Yeah.
right? So for example, there's a line in Portal, right? The famous thing, the cake is a lie,
Mm-hmm.
right? Is that a spoiler?
Mm.
And then tell me why. Do you think it's a spoiler?
I don't know. I don't think so. But like it could be because like if it reveals like if it's like a twist, like and you know about it beforehand, it's like, well, the twist won't be there. But then again, it's like what I feel. Um, I again like I also feel that when it comes to like on the one hand, I can understand when it comes to like if you know a twist beforehand, like you can't you may remember when you see that like, oh no, I know about this. But that could also just be a great thing because like I also really enjoy it when like if I know ahead of time that something is going to be different. I also love seeing like, oh shit, I know about this, I know about this, I know about this, and you can also like enjoy it more there. It's like I don't know. Mm.
I argue it is not a spoiler,
Mm-hmm.
right? It is something that is like written on the walls in the Aperture Science environments,
Mm-hmm.
right? Especially like behind the testing environments that you can get into. And it is just foreshadowing of what's to come,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I would argue it's not a lie. So it's not a spoiler, sorry.
No.
It's not a lie. It's not a spoiler. if you're watching the first season of Game of Thrones and someone turns around and is like, oh, so and so hasn't died yet, that is a spoiler, because typically the deaths in Game of Thrones are unforeseen, right? Oh, Tyrion hasn't killed his father yet. What the hell? Like, because it is entire, like, you do not see that Tyrion, right, is going to kill Tywin until maybe 5 minutes before it happens. Right? It's completely unexpected.
Yeah.
And that's the point. If you've got foreshadowed things like the cake is a lie, that is not a spoiler, because it is foreshadowed to what's going to happen. If you get blindsided by something, right? Like, oh god, trying to think of another shit. What's oh god, what's a good spoiler? I'm trying to think. So no, not
Luke,
a spoiler.
I'm
Like
your father.
yeah, I mean, like, you know. So no, that is a spoiler, right? Because you don't know that there is nothing. There is no precursor, right, throughout the entirety of New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back to indicate that Darth Vader is Anakin Skywalker. Nothing. And when it is said, it is completely out of left field. You're like, holy shit. That is a spoiler.
So how do you
right?
feel about something like Fight Club?
What, the twist at the end?
Yeah, like...
I saw it coming from a mile away.
Yeah, so would you consider that a spoiler or not?
No, that is a spoiler, right? If you were just to say what happens at the end of Fight Club, that is a spoiler, because not everyone's going to guess what's happening, because it is not particularly foreshadowed.
Yeah.
Right? So, oh god, what's oh god, I'm trying to think of like good cases of foreshadowing. Examples of foreshadowing.
So
Let's
like in general, I do agree when it comes to I partly agree when it comes to like foreshadowing. If it's something that's just like you can see it already, like it's just like it's kind of in there, like it's not really a spoiler. Then again, I do have to say
got one for you.
I do have to say that the best reveals when it comes to like revealing something, making a good twist, it needs to like be like you need to be have been able to see it beforehand in some way, because like if you want to like make a reveal and it doesn't connect with anything, it's like you don't feel it other than like if you have a good reveal, you're gonna have like one or two clues beforehand which you don't notice unless you know, and then like when the reveal comes, it's like, oh, now that makes sense. I think that is like part of a good twist, that like there is some foreshadowing which doesn't make sense when you see it the first time, but once you know it, it's like, oh, that connects. Like that is like the best reveal. So sometimes like the best spoilers have some foreshadowing in them. But then again, it's like, yeah, if it's too clear, I don't know. Go ahead. What do you want to say?
So, when I was studying in school and things like that, one of the books in English class we had to read was Of Mice and Men. Right? Now, there was this one character who was the son of this farmer, and he was a boxer. He was a fighter. He was a piece of shit, right? The guy was shit, but he kept one hand, right, in a glove filled with Vaseline, right? Keep the skin soft. Yeah, because he wanted to be able to touch his mistress or his wife or whomever, his girlfriend, with his soft hand, and for it to feel soft on her skin. But he was a fighter. He would get into a lot of fights, and his right hand, like, you know, it was all calloused over, it was rough, so on and so forth. So he would never hit anyone with his left hand. He would only ever punch them with his right hand. Right? That is foreshadowing to indicate one of those hands is going to get royally fucked up.
Yeah.
Right? I think it was the right hand. So basically, there was this guy that was like a giant. He was simple-minded. He was for all intents and purposes, if there was a doctor to diagnose him, he was retarded, right? And he accidentally killed someone, right? He killed this is a spoiler, right? He accidentally killed the wife, the girlfriend, right? Because he was very heavy-handed and things like this. He was touching her hair. He liked how soft it was. He was stroking too hard, and he accidentally broke her neck, right? The guy, right, the boxer guy, got really angry, threw a punch. It was caught by the giant, and the giant crushed his hand, right? Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's how the narrative played out. So you knew that the hand was going to get fucked up,
But you didn't know how.
but you didn't know
Yeah.
why.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's and so there's a difference between a spoiler and foreshadowing within the same one narrative.
Yeah. So I'm happy with that distinction. There are two more things where I kind of want to like touch on when it comes to like spoilers. Where one is intention and the other is time. So if someone just comes along with me, like the way you said, like I'm watching something and someone just comes around and is like, oh shit, he hasn't died yet? Oh, this hasn't happened yet? Oh shit, no, wait, you aren't at this part yet? It's like, yeah, fuck off, dude. It doesn't matter regardless of what it is. Like, you're just being an asshole right now. But if I'm watching a review, or if I'm like going over Twitter and people are like tweeting about like, oh my god, I saw this, and like they're in a discussion about the thing. It's like, I personally feel that like at that point, it's like, it's fine. Like people just like people should not be hindered to like not talk about something because like, oh no, like you can't talk about this for a month because otherwise people get spoiled. It's like, no, dude, it's like as long as people don't like barge into their way to like be like, oh, this happens to you, like just like I'm fine with it. It's like,
It's the difference between common courtesy and going over the top, right?
Yeah.
You know, for example, I don't think it's a spoiler to say, you know, what the big reveal within Warframe is, right? But at the same time, it's common courtesy not to spoil it for people. It's to let it happen, right?
Well, like that's partly where like the thing of time comes into play, where like I would be opposed to going to a new player in Warframe and say like, oh, dude, Tenno. But like I don't like that. I'm not a supporter of like, oh, let's discuss like Warframe, and oh yeah, we mentioned the second dream. Oh, now we gotta put spoiler warnings everywhere because that's been like 5 years ago that thing came out. It's like, if you want to discuss something which includes this thing, if you want to discuss like anything about Warframe, it's like, go right ahead, talk about it. I like this thing happened so long ago. If you want to go play it, it's right there. You can just do it. So like that's also where I feel like with the amount of time that passed, if it's like within the first week of like this thing coming out, like I think it's like the hype trend. Like if the second dream where like the major reveal is like, if that is like on the hype trend, that's the brand new thing, of course just tread carefully. But I think right now, if I were to like make a review of like the second dream, or if I were to like criticize Warframe on its lore and it includes the second dream and not like the latest thing of lore that came out, which has been like years, I don't know when it was. It's like, I'm not gonna like yeah, I don't think it applies. Do you?
It's hard to say because again, what is a spoiler? You know, like within the Jimquisition, like he's talking about spoilers, and people blew up at him, you know, after he announced that you could play as Luigi instead of Mario. I'm like, that's not a fucking spoiler. Fuck off, right? That's nothing. You know, that might be an incentive for some people to play it.
Yeah.
Watching someone play the entirety of a single player game, like I watched Markiplier and Jacksepticeye play the entirety of Resident Evil 2 and 3. Oh, wait, no, I didn't watch Jacksepticeye for that. But, you know, watching Markiplier play Resident Evil 2 and 3, that's just 100% spoilers, right? But I did that knowing it. So I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, so I'm not 100% sure. Why would someone watch a review not expecting some form of spoilers? How could you even do that?
Yeah, I don't know, but like that's something which you see a lot when it comes to like Warframe videos with the thing you pointed out. It's like if people are like I've seen it a lot. Like I haven't watched a Warframe video in a year, but like last year you would still see it as like today we're gonna be discussing like the second dream. So spoiler alert, watch out guys, or people being forum threads be like, oh yeah no so like I kind of want to talk about the focus system. So spoiler alert everyone, second dream spoilers, and I'm like, dude, it's been 4 or 5 years. Like, chill, chill. Like, no need to worry about this anymore. Like, I think that like for like if I think that for me like finding like when would I give a spoiler alert or warning or whatever, like when do spoilers matter? I think that your definition of like, is it foreshadowing, is it just like environment, or is it like an actual like plot element which like you couldn't expect, which is literally a spoiler? It's like I think that distinction needs to be made. Like playing Luigi isn't really a spoiler. So I think that that is something which I agree with. Then when it comes to what intent, if it's like if you are just watching something and someone just comes along and says like, oh, this is gonna happen, it's like, yeah, fuck off. But if I'm making a bloody review, or if I'm like talking about it on Twitter, it's like if I'm having discussion with someone about it, I think that that's a big difference. And then time frame, I think that for me the time frame is like the hype period. So like when if something comes out, like if Endgame comes out, like and like in the first few weeks when everyone's talking about it, if you then go on like Twitter, or you go into like a Discord group and you start talking about like, oh yeah, how do you feel about when Iron Man? And it's like, yeah, and everyone just like, I mean, like, yeah, you're a bit of an ass because like you can't expect everyone to see it in like the first week or whatever. But once the hype period dies down, and that difference per thing is like, it's free game. I feel.
I get where you're coming from. I think to turn this slightly on its head. So literally as we are what's it called? No, it was announced earlier today that Warframe is going to do public test realms. Sorry, public test clusters, right? And allowing people to go on there and help DE test the various new features that they're working on. Now, my question to you is it irresponsible for content creators to talk about the stuff that they potentially see on the public test cluster, knowing full well that it could change or it could damage the reputation of Digital Extremes for content that is not yet out? Does the question make sense?
Yeah. So like,
Is it irresponsible of the content?
Is it irresponsible if you create content or like base opinions on like the public testing service, which isn't like the content that's actually out there?
Yeah.
I think for me, a keyword is public in a public testing servers.
They are public. They're limited to the number of people that can actually get on them.
Yeah. So like if you're limited to the amount of people that can get on there, and like if you get on there you have to sign an NDA because like you are the limited testers and there's only for like the testing eyes to see, then yeah, then it's a private thing which you shouldn't necessarily share because that'd be irresponsible. But like if it's a public testing server, like if it's public,
I don't think there's an NDA.
If there isn't, then like,
so it's a limited number of people that can actually be involved in the testing. So there's it's limited number of people that can be involved in. You basically say, I think the phrase is "count me in" on this one forum post, and people will be picked at random as to being invited to the test, and you'll be given a Steam key, which will allow you to get onto the public test cluster, right? So only a limited number of people will be allowed on it. and not necessarily content create. Content creators may not even be able to get there, right? So, if a content creator does get on public test cluster to help improve the whatever aspect of Warframe, is it irresponsible for them talk about the content that they have seen on the public test cluster?
I would say if there is no NDA, I would say no, it's not irresponsible for them to do, because I would then like it to a prototype reveal. Like, let's say we had like the Tesla reveal thing where they showed off like the Tesla Cybertruck. Like, that's by far not a completed thing. That thing's not even in production. There's going to be many things on that will not be the same in the end product. There'll be many things that will be changed, things that don't work. But like, they're inviting people over to like take a look at it, give their opinions on it, test it out. And in that case, like, yeah, you're free to talk about it. If there's an NDA signed and it's like this, like your only purpose is to test this and you're not allowed to talk about this to anyone, then yeah, no, definitely don't talk about it, because I know that like within test builds, there's going to be a lot of different things which will not make it to the end product, and like it's not going to be the end thing. However, if it is going to be shown off to like the public without an NDA, then you could take this as like a thing which might be to come. However, it will be responsible if you make claims about the base release game based on like what you're seeing in the test server. Like, if you want to like use the test server without an NDA, public test server, and be like, okay, this is something which might be coming, this like the way that like this thing's taking shape, I would akin it to like looking at a dev stream and then basing like your opinions on what you see in a dev stream. That's the way that I feel about it, because like if they're not like the company itself already has testers that are under NDA. I'm aware of that, and like, so they have the conscious, like they're making a conscious decision. If there's no NDA involved going to be in this, then they know what they're sharing to like the public testing grounds and what they're keeping in the NDA testing grounds. So then they already know what's going to be like somewhat public knowledge. And if this is available for people to see without restrictions, then it should be like you should be able to talk about it. I don't think that it's irresponsible to talk about it. It will be irresponsible if you aren't sticking true to the definitions. Like, if you're saying that like, oh, look at this thing, this is so broken, the game is so broken, look at this is so broken, but it's in the testing server. Like, you should make clear that it's in the testing server. But if you want to use what you see in the testing server and you don't have an NDA, like, I think it's a really important thing. Just as like you're looking at dev stream, you're like, oh, well, that in the dev stream right there didn't really work well. That doesn't really bode well for like these abilities or whatever they're showing off. I think it's more akin to that. But how do you feel?
So my concern is, say they put on the test environment, is it Protea? I think that's it's the new Tracer
Warframe
clone,
yeah,
whatever, Warframe. If they put Protea on test environment and they let content creators look at it, and the content creator goes, that fourth ability is fit. It's absolutely fit. Oh, I can't believe how bad it is. Right? Well, that's going to have a negative impact on what DE do. So that DE can either hold back on releasing the whole main line. They could hold back on releasing Protea. They could hold back on they could take down the video and say, like, you're not meant to do this. They could do all sorts of weird and wonderful shit.
Well,
right?
It depends on the preconditions, because like, if you are saying like you get access to this, but like you're not allowed to talk about it, which we would clarify under NDA, that's like, yeah, fine. But if you're not saying that, then like, I don't think that there are grounds to like take down a video. I feel like like content creators can say the exact same thing when they're showing off Warframe in a dev stream, and they can say the exact same thing, like, this sucks, this looks horrible, and people do every single time when like something is shown off on like a conference or like in an announcement or on a dev stream. Like, people will be like, oh, this sucks, this is horrible. It's like, dude, you haven't even played it. And like the test server, yeah, you have a little bit more access to it because you can actually play it, but still, it's like not the final build, so you can't say anything about the final product. But like, I really akin it to a dev stream if they don't do an NDA. If they do an NDA, then there's no question about it. It's irresponsible to talk about it. But if they're
So,
keeping it public,
but here's the point, right?
yeah.
You said that the key defining difference was you haven't played it, but in this instance we're describing, they have played it.
Yeah, but they've played the
Right.
test. They've played the test server. So like the thing is with the dev stream, like if I see something in an announcement, then it's like, yeah, you can't really say about like what it will be in the game itself because you don't play it. You haven't played it yet. So like you can't say what well like you can't really make a solid argument like this plays horrible because you haven't played it. If you want to make a statement on like this plays horrible in the final product, like you can't do that on the testing ground. If you want to say this plays horrible in the testing server and there's no NDA, feel free to do it. I got no problem with that.
You're saying the important part, which is the testing server.
Yeah.
So if you were to just simply say this plays horrible,
yeah, well, like it would be
that's to me that is irresponsible.
In general,
yeah.
it's a rather irresponsible claim on like basically anything if you don't specify enough. But like if you were to say like this, like if you say this is horrible in the final product, yeah, like yeah, that you can't make that claim because it's on the final product. But if you say it's horrible as it is now in the testing server, or as it is now, or as I've played it, like I'm fine with that.
No, but even then, that's not good enough. If you say like I've just played Protea, she is awful, right? What if I come to see your video a month down the line when Protea's out?
Yeah, but like the thing is, see, hold on. This is something which is rather important. It's like it's not a content creator isn't a promotional device for Warframe. They're not attached to Warframe. So like if they want to say something, it doesn't matter what the effect will be for Warframe. If Warframe wants to like make sure that this doesn't get negative press, then they should throw an NDA on it. Like it's not the content creator's responsibility to make sure that Warframe gets good press. Like they just do what they want because they are a separate entity. They're not like linked in that sense. It's not like maybe it'd be better for their views if Warframe didn't go down. But then again, like if you want to be a content creator on your own, it's like maybe not like tie your entire existence to one single game, but it's like it's
not to focus on the relationship held between the content creator and the game. Let's say random Joe blogs, right?
Yeah.
Say one of our lovely viewers here, right? Let's say Fred, right? Turns around and goes like, oh, they're doing public test realms. Do you know what I could do? I could get on the public test realm and I could start my Warframe career that way, right? No, so not my Warframe, my YouTube career that way, right? They start doing Warframe videos using the public test cluster to promote themselves, right? It is for them to gain a leg up, right? Because they will have access to something that not necessarily everyone else will have access to, right? So entirely depending on how they phrase it determines how it will be received. So if someone says, as you put it moments ago, I've just played Protea, hypothetically as you just put it, I've just played Protea and she sucks, compared to I've just played Protea on the test cluster and she sucks, right? There's a huge stark difference because someone who comes in a month later, half a year later, or the next day, right, can interpret the wording completely different.
Well, see, this is the thing. It's like I personally feel when it comes to like good responsibility when it comes to creating content, like you should always abide by certain standards, like don't lie. I think that's like the main important thing. Like don't lie about what you do. Like I think it's a little bit of a gray territory when it comes to like I just played this thing Protea and like I think she sucks. Like you're not making a false claim in that because you just played it right there. Like it would be better if you were to clarify that was on the test server. Like that would be even more accurate, and I would definitely say do that. That being said, like the platform and the way that views work, or the way that success on YouTube or Twitch works right now, or just in general when it comes to publicity, like truth doesn't necessarily promote like a lot of people get really high up with shitty behavior. Right now, the system doesn't condition for being truthful, being moral, and all that stuff. So, as far if your only concern with making videos or creating content is to get financial gain and grow your channel, as long as you're working within like the confines of like what's allowed, within like the things that you signed, I mean, like, I would not support it. I don't think that it's a smart thing to do, but you can do it. Um, when it comes to like the argument of like having a leg up because like, oh yeah, I'm in this testing server. I don't think that that's necessarily a problem because like you have a lot of people, especially when it comes to like in the tech world, where people will get like phones review samples like weeks early. So that like when something gets launched like under NDA, like oh this new phone gets launched, you get all these reviews. Or like I've already been using this for 2 weeks. It's like yeah, that's kind of unfair because like you've been in a select group of people that have had that thing for 2 weeks and composed a review, and I have to wait for it. So like if you are in a test server and there is no NDA, I think you're fine to talk about it. At the same time, like I don't think that there is a problem necessarily with someone like making a video about it, making a video about like their opinion on it. Like as long like they like it doesn't matter in the point of like what people make videos on, or the way that they like what they say and what effect that will have on like this game. It's like it doesn't matter from the perspective of the content creator because like the content creator isn't tied to the game, so it doesn't like it there's no like they should or shouldn't act because of that. It's like if the game doesn't want to have videos like that, it should have it in the NDA. Is it morally just to make false claims? Is it morally just to leave out important information? No, I wouldn't support that. But could they do it? Yeah, I think that if DE wants to go over like do this public testing thing without an NDA, then I think that they should very, very, very well be certain about what they release in there because like this is what you're leaving the door open, and that's on you. Like if I go out and like share pictures on my stream of things, or if I share like upcoming videos or whatever, if I share like personal information with like a group of people on my stream and they want to like talk about it, it's like, yeah, it's on me for sharing it. It's on me for showing it. Is it morally good for you to like air all the dirty laundry that I just shared with you online, like on a live stream? No, not
Yeah.
necessarily, but you can do it. And like, I'm in favor of like having that freedom of doing whatever it is within the legal boundaries. So that's the way that I view it.
I mean, nothing stops them from turning around and going like, oh, sorry, you were exploiting this thing. Oh, well, I guess you're not going to get hold of this thing anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah,
know?
I mean, like, yeah, like again, it's like if you do it once and it hurts Warframe, they'll kick you out. So like again,
Yeah.
it's like in your moral best interest to probably not do that because then you'll be able to continue to use it. But if you just want to go ahead and do it and there's no NDA involved that says you're not allowed to do it, free game, man. Free game. I wouldn't recommend it, but free game.
It's interesting because the way you say this, because oh god, was it like I know that again, Jacksepticeye and Markiplier have all spoken about this briefly. Basically, they will get access. I think Game Grumps have said this as well. They'll get access to a game early, right? Like 2-3 weeks early. Jacksepticeye actually did it with Death Stranding. He got it 2 weeks early, so he could actually build up his videos and release them as soon as the game went live. Right? But it was interesting because when he was going through the environment, like none of the multiplayer elements where other players had built roads or whatever was there. Like it was just him on his own. There might have been a couple of other people. But then when he came back after it had gone live to actually finish the gameplay, to finish the plot and whatever, like the number of community contributed elements was massive, right? The world really felt like it was alive. And so I think there is an interesting point there behind like NDA stuff and you know, publicly accessible things. I know again, World of Warcraft suffered a lot of this, and in the end, they just went, you know what, we just can't fight them. We just can't fight them, and stuff gets leaked nearly constant.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to believe that like acting in a just way will ultimately come back to you, and acting in an unjust way will ultimately come back to you too. And may that be in like some things get revoked from you, or you get kicked out from something, or people you build a reputation of not being honest with something. Like that will get back to you, I hope, because I hope that the world is in some way fair. I do think that it's also perfectly fine. Like the thing is that like I can understand where you're coming from, where it's like, should you be responsible with how will this affect like the game? If I get access to like the public testing service from Warframe, do I have to keep in mind what effect my video or my thing that I do will have on Warframe? Like if I do this, and should I take that into account? And like if it comes to like when it comes to personal relations, if it comes to like me with you, if like I do something that might affect you, then I think it's important that I consider that. However, this is the thing. It's not a personal relation with Warframe, because like that is something that's like a mode of being which works very well when you have it with two individuals, because you hope that the other side will have the same reciprocity, where they'd be like, if they were in a situation where something might negatively affect you, they'd be like, well, let me consider and like not do this. However, a game company is a company. They're not an individual. They will not go ahead and like consider you next time and be like, oh yeah, let us not do this in order to like not do this because this might negatively affect this individual. It's like, no, that's not going to happen. It's a company. It does what it wants. So like if you're dealing with a company, it's like, do how you feel like, and as long as you're acting according to like all your obligations that you have when it comes to NDAs, when it comes to like the law, it's like you're free to move because they're free to move. And it's like they're gonna do what they want. And like if you're gonna like adjust yourself and maneuver in ways that like, oh, this might like please the institution, it's like it's not gonna care. It's really not gonna care. And I can tell that from experience multiple times. I have treated I've treated game companies like that. This game company, I've treated it like that. I've treated it like a friend. I've treated it like, oh, I'll help out, and in return that it will be reciprocated, but they won't, because it's a company. Companies don't care. So do it towards individuals. Be responsible with individuals when it comes to like your future for your channel, and you're like, hey, I want to continue to use this testing server. Hey, I want to continue to use this. Or hey, I want to like have this. I don't want to be known towards all of the gaming industry as a guy that like always like leaks things, because then I'll never get NDA access. Probably don't do it. But like, if you think you should, if you want to do something, but you're held back by maybe this might not be so good for the game, it's like, well, like do what you think is morally just. But like I would say, don't hold back on doing something like it's not an individual. And I think that like that might be a little bit like you're looking at it like the way that I would treat you. And like I think that there's a difference in individuals and companies. Go ahead.
A question for you then.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Say do you have a PlayStation 4?
Yeah, I do.
Right. So say you were to do a Let's Play series of Final Fantasy VII Remake and put it up on your channel.
Yeah.
Right. How would you think the what happens if someone starts turning to you and say, oh, spoilers?
Well, I'd just be like, why are you watching this? Why are you watching this?
Because they want to watch you.
Yeah, well, like there's many videos of me. There's many hours of content of me which do not include Final Fantasy. So if you click on a video, like if it's a video where like, meme time, and then in the middle of the time I'm just gonna throw in like spoilers for Final Fantasy, yes, they have a point. If there's like Final Fantasy playthrough, it's like, yeah, you don't have a point. You knew it was gonna happen. You saw it coming.
No, but I mean the point is that you don't necessarily see like this, like, you know, what if you were to talk about Game of Thrones, right? What if you were to do a review of Game of Thrones, and you literally put in that iconic scene of Sean Bean's character having his head chopped off, right? You're reviewing the content.
Yeah.
Right? But, you know, other people might like, oh man, this guy's selling the content really, really well. Oh, I'll fucking buy the shit out of that. You know, and then you just spoil the end.
It depends. It depends on what services it's being put in. If I'm going to talk about like the narrative structure within Game of Thrones and the importance of character deaths and the importance of surprise character deaths, then of course like it's part of my argument. It's part of like the thing you're watching. So like you can see it coming. Like if like as long as it's that part of something that I'm talking about, that like that's the videos. That's what the video's about. Like, hey, you can expect it if it comes out of left field because it's like, oh, hey, there's this thing called Game of Thrones. Oh, this happens. Yeah, no.
So do you think that in a review there should be an agenda at the beginning of the review saying like, this is the various different areas we're going to cover, and these by here are spoiler filled?
No, not necessarily, because I feel that like if you're watching a review on YouTube a review in general, like you're already like entering area where like an area where like you might like this might be risky. A good review, in my opinion, doesn't spoil much. Like it just gives like a basic rundown of like what you can expect. Like just gives you the basic elements of what's important to make the argument about what you put the review around. But like if you click on reviews of things, like it might happen. it's it's like you're already treading into the territory where people are discussing the material, and like my goal is to discuss the material, and like I'm gonna make as good a point as I can on like what I think of this material, and I will use every tool in my arsenal to make as good as a point. Otherwise, I'd be doing a detriment to that point. And if you want to see a review, I'm gonna expect that you want to see me make as good as a review as I can. So I'm not gonna like break down my point in ways where it might be spoilery to people. It's like, yo, if you want to see a good review, you come for the review. If you don't want to be spoiled, don't come to a review.
But surely a review does not talk about what happens in the plot.
It
That's what a
depends.
synopsis is.
Well, so okay, so there's 2 points I want to make. First of all, a lot of reviews on YouTube are really bad, and I agree. Like you should like most reviews on YouTube right now are just like, I'm gonna talk about everything that happens, and I'm gonna say at the end I like it, and that's my review. That's not a review. That's not a review at all. You don't say every single thing that happens and say every spoiler. That's that's not a review. However, you can review something as like, this is my general review of it. I think analysis might be the better term. Like if you can also review something based on like, hey, I'm gonna review this movie in terms of like how does Fight Club use its twist versus like how does Star Wars use its twist, and what's like the magic of a good twist. Like that's a review of these movies, but actually that might be a better term might be analysis there. But like in those cases, like my point would be like we're looking at like both these things and what can we learn from both these twists. In order to talk about that, we're going to talk about what the twists are. We're going to show it because like you want to look at it. Same with like why is the Joker scene in Batman one of the like the best scenes that won an Oscar. Like you're not going to like blur out everything up the scene for people that haven't seen it because you're talking about the thing. You're like, we're going to take a look at this and we're going to see what went well and what is so good, so golden.
So like this is interesting because I don't necessarily feel that you can make a direct comparison between movies and games, because movies, I feel, as you pointed out at the beginning of this, they rely so much more on the plot, whereas games, not necessarily. People don't care too much about the plot, but that's a wide range. It depends on the
Mm-hmm.
game. Like Final Fantasy VII, very focused on the plot. But again, a comparison I would argue made, like you're doing a review of God, what's the name of the damn game? StarCraft, the first
Mm-hmm.
StarCraft game, and you're talking about the rock, paper, scissors elements to the RTS, the resource management of the RTS, how the narrative is broken up into 3 parts for each of the races, and Tassadar dies at the end, and it's just like, oh, whoa, why did you need to put that in there? Why did you need to say that? Like that's not part of a review. Like you just told me what happened at the end. Like
Mm-hmm.
my opinion of the game is it's great, you know, and I really like the FMV work on it. And Sarah Kerrigan gets turned into the Queen of Blades, and it's like, you know, why did you just say that? Why did you just tell me something that happens in the plot,
Well,
right?
it it depends on the approach of the review. Like if your review is just like a general review, and then like you're gonna, oh, this happens, this happens, this happens. It's like, yeah. But I've also recently watched a channel review like the entire Dragon Ball Super story. And basically they do that episode by episode. They're like, so like we're gonna like this review, we're gonna go over Dragon Ball Super, and we're gonna go over the arcs, and we're gonna go over the episodes, and we're gonna see like what works and what doesn't work, and why does it work and why doesn't it work. And in that case, like at the end, like everything of like that Dragon Ball Super arc is shown. Like if you haven't seen it, you know at the end exactly how everything goes. But it's because like this is something where like it's really focused on like how is the story executed, and we're going to go over the story. In order to understand the story, we look at how it's executed. And like the same thing with what you're talking about with the narrative in games is like if your approach, like that's the interesting thing about YouTube reviews or reviews in general from different persons, is like you can really niche down on something. So like if you want to talk about this new game and solely the lore because you only care about lore and the way the lore is executed and the narrative is executed, then you can talk about that.
See, I argue that's not a review. That's a breakdown, right? If you're going through if you're effectively watching the series with the reviewer, right? You're not watching a review, you're watching a breakdown, right? It's like I'm talking about this thing that's happening on the screen at the same time as me talking about. That's, you know, that's not a review. A
Right,
review is
right.
supposed to be something that's much more macro level. It's supposed to be something a lot further away from the source, right?
Yeah,
Like it
I
when
I I think like I'm not necessarily happy with the definition of breakdown being like this glorified reaction video where you're like watching at the same time. But like if you want to say like breakdown being like analysis where like you go deeper into the source material and you show examples of the source material to highlight different things to make the point, I agree. Um if you say review is just like giving people a general impression of like what this thing is about and what are great points about it and weak points about it and like what do you recommend you try it out or not, if that's the goal of the video to like give people like should you try this out or not, then definitely no, don't spoil it because like your
so
purpose is to like make people buy it or not.
so um there's a YouTuber called Mauler,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which I think I've brought up before. He does breakdowns of movies and things. He's done it
Yeah.
of Captain Marvel. He's done it of The Predator. The Predator is like one of the worst movies in the entire universe.
Mm-hmm.
But after he's actually done the breakdown and he's gone over the stupid elements of the plot as you are effectively watching it, he will then basically say what was wrong. He will do his review after he's done the breakdown, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at no point in time should a review ever truly reveal what happens in the narrative. That is like, you know, otherwise, you know, why isn't there a review of Endgame, which is like you're basically sat down with the reviewer for the entire 2.5 hours of the movie. I think it's 2.5.
Well, I mean, there are endgame reviews where they're but like reviews about like how the Iron Man moment is like how that like links back to the very beginning, like why that is such a great moment. They're reviewing it by going over it, like how did this thing like how does this thing happen? Like why does what he says link back to like the very first movie? Why does this character arc like portray like very well and continue this path from like the first movie to the final one? And why is it so great that it is him because like he was the first movie. It's like it depends on like how you tackle your review and like this this might be a term where like people call it review because like there's no clear like you can't call an analysis a review, or you can't call a breakdown a review, because people can be very, very like liberal with the terminology that they use. But as long as like with review, we're gonna go by the definition of just like something where it's like we're gonna go over the global thing, like the general gist of it, and we're gonna like highlight some points which I like and which I don't like, and at the end, like this should hopefully give you an impression on whether you should see it or interact with it or buy it or not. Then if that is the review that we're looking at, then like yeah, I would not say don't spoil things, but then you would also not go in depth that much.
So I'm just having a look at right. So a review, a formal assessment of something with the intention of instituting change if necessary, right? Whereas an analysis is a detailed examination of the elements or structure of something. So when you do a breakdown of that scene in Endgame, I would totally argue that is an analysis, right? Whereas a review is something that's a lot broader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I would agree with that terminology. That being said, a lot of YouTube videos or online reviews do tend to cross that border very liberally, because like you're like whatever people want to say, and I don't know. It's just people will go by different definitions. But yeah, if it comes down to that, no, don't spoil.
One thing that I've recently been like a bit jonesing for Minecraft. And I thought, you know what, let's look for mod pack reviews. And the number of fucking shite ass fucking, I swear, mod pack reviews just don't exist, because it's just most of the time it's just people spouting out random nonsense.
But like that's the thing, people can classify what they're making, but like that's been everywhere, like because documentaries like this is something which I've only gotten to know like a couple of years ago, but documentaries have a certain like number of criteria. And actually, let me see if I can find the criteria for documentary, because I believe that the criteria for having something called a documentary is the length of it, is I don't know if this is like, no, I'm just,
doesn't it have to be factual and informative?
No. The thing is that like I can't find it right now, but the criteria of having a documentary is like it needs to exceed a certain number of time. If you want to have a documentary in film, if you want to have your film classified as documentary, it needs to exceed a number of time. It needs to be based off like a real world subject, and it needs to have something else. But nowhere do you need to be truthful. So if you can have a documentary that is about a subject, but that can be entirely about like whatever you envision that to be, and you can like the entire like Goop Lab Gwyneth Paltrow thing, like that can just be a documentary, because it is a certain length and it's like it's about something in the real world, but it doesn't have to be truthful, because documentaries.
Oh, is that how that thing got made?
Probably, but like documentaries do not have to be truthful. They don't have to be objective and truthful. Same with journalism, actually, because like most journalism is, or like most newspapers are based off like income revenue. So like the end goal of news isn't to sell you the truth, it's to sell you something that gets your attention so that they can get the advertisement revenue. It's like that's something which is really important to realize, that even though something may not technically be that thing, like there is no governing body that will be like, this is this. It's like, because like there's always like play around, so always be kind of skeptical.
So I think we're at time at this point.
Yeah.
I already put in chat, get your questions ready. So if anyone is listening to this and is not reading chat, please feel free to get your questions ready. Do you get many questions on the YouTube?
No, but we do get amazing analysis from our previous episodes. I can pull one up, but like we do get like some really cool like comments, essay comments, where like they break down the points that we make and then give their opinion. And, like I really, really love reading them.
Right. So Sentient Ephemy, I think. I'll have to talk to them and say, like, how do you pronounce your name? But anyway, so would a review not be more opinionated than an analysis? I don't think a review has to be more opinionated than an analysis. I think a review is a review should be factual for a start, right? So in academia, when you're doing like when you're at university and stuff, you have to do what's called a literature review, where you have to find publications and you have to state facts of what the literature, what the publications cover. So you can't make shit up. In addition, you are supposed to use the facts from the publications to support your theories, and your observations and your methodology actually complete your report. And so the literature's got to support your theories, which are confirmed by your observations, methodology, blah 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 blah. So I do not think a review has to be more opinionated than an analysis. I think the difference between a review and an analysis is the level of detail. You can put opinions and things in there, but I think it's entirely dependent on reception and audience. If you were to put opinions in a literature review for a report in academia, it will get chewed up and spat back out. Yeah, no opinions, just facts. But look at zero punctuation. That's 100% opinion based, and it's very critical, right? It's a critique of a video game. I would say that again is a step further away from the source material than a review. It's a lot more broad, but there are some, but the breakdown analysis that Mauler does, literally, it's a play-by-play of everything that happens with his own spin and interpretation on it, which makes perfect sense to me, with a review afterwards. So I think it is just a case of micro to macro.
Yeah. I think in popular culture, most of the things that you're going to find on YouTube or like websites, they're going to be opinionated pieces. Because like mostly reviews are like, or an analysis are like, this is something I like, this is something I think they do well, this is something I think is being performed correctly or wrong, and because of this and this and this. So yeah, like, I mean, popular culture, they're going to be very opinionated. I know, like, when it comes to like more of when it comes to like doing university reviews, when it comes to like doing that, like I remember when I first started like doing these reviews or writing these pieces, in high school we had to like prepare for like university level, and I would like always like I always like to write, so I would always like write with what flowed. So I would like put in words like sadly or what else, like I would always add like emotions to it. So like sadly this is the case, and then they would get really mad like, you can't say that, and I'd be like, but it sounds good. It's like, no opinions. Yeah. So
here's so people using wrong terminology. I'm getting so whitewashed by my monitor right now. So here's the definition for podcast: a digital audio file made available on the internet for download to a computer or mobile device, typically available as a series, new installments of which can be received by subscribers automatically. So this podcast, the Framecast podcast, is not actually a podcast by definition.
Actually, I would disagree in a sense, because a podcast was actually like, there is someone that created the podcast, and recently he was on a podcast with Joe Rogan, and I listened to that podcast, but it's been a while, so I forgot like the exact thing. But they just called it a podcast because they were just doing like this broadcast thing online, and they were like, oh, let's call it podcast, and then people just adopted the thing. It's like, oh yeah, we're doing podcast too, and then it became podcast. It's just like what people kind of like name it, and these terms are open to change, because like you'll find with like vlogs back in the day on YouTube, used to be like this one thing where people would hold like a point and shoot camera like this to their face and
Yeah.
like that and like just go for their lives. And then like Casey Neistat came around and you did it with a DSLR and like cinematic things, and now that's a flog. And like these creative things, they change so much so that like.
But it's interesting because like obviously the definition from a dictionary, so on and so forth. But like I get where you're coming from because the word literally, right? Now also informally means figuratively, which should not be fucking allowed.
Oh, that's literally like the worst thing in my entire life. Welcome everybody. My name is Leafy's here, and today we're going to be talking about literally the worst thing ever as I live for another struggle, another day.
Right. So I think that's it for this episode. We haven't had any more questions. So yeah, let's round it off, my man.
Yep. Thank you guys so much for watching. 40. Oh, we actually do have sending feedback coming in. I'm just going to read this real quickly. She says, but in a more professional situation, a review would be more about the facts, whereas giving the consumers a good sense to decide, let's see, but in a more professional situation, a review would be more about the facts, giving the consumer a good sense to decide, whereas, as you said, analysis would be describing each part, situation, connections, and interpretations. Although, since interpretations might be incorrect or what is being interpreted is a bit abstract, causing the interpretation to be more of a perspective rather than a fact. Literally is the worst auto-antonym out there. Literally died years ago. I mean, like, the thing which comes down like in popular culture generally a lot when it comes to with reviews. Yeah, you say like a review should be more about the facts, but when it comes to popular culture, a lot of times what you find is that like people give grades because of how much they like things, and like they'll say this thing is bad because I don't like it, and that's what like most review things come down to these days. I think the best reviews, the best popular reviews are reviews where reviewers say if you come from like if you are a person that likes lore, if you're a lore person in this game, you're not gonna like this. It's gonna be a bad game for you. If you're a person that does this, then you're gonna like this. So like you're going from like what kind of like perspectives would you come from it? Yeah, generally people will be kind of like more opinionated in popular culture. Anyway, that's Framecast 40 for you guys. We need to wrap up because we've been going on for a while. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you check out Casino on youtube.com/CasinoGalleon. That is not an opinion, that's a fact. You should check him out. And then you should also go to his Patreon and donate all the money you have. That's also a fact. That's not a review. That's not an opinion. That's things. Go check it out.
It's an analysis.
It's a breakdown. As we are going to be reacting and watching as you put all your life savings into Casino's Patreon.
Can you not? Can you stop right now?
And that is like that's definitely the best life advice we're gonna give you. Don't make shitty life choices based on our advice. We're just blabbering about here. Don't take anything we say as truth. We're just merely talking heads on your monitor.
Additionally, if you didn't catch this live, we're typically Tuesday at 8 p.m.
European time and 7 p.m. UK time
and 2 p.m. Eastern America time. So, and then it's live on YouTube 24 hours later. So, yeah.
Yep. So, thanks so much for listening. 10 more episodes until the 50th episode. If you have some cool ideas for what we could do for the 50th episode, let us know, because I'm open for suggestions. It's going to still be like 10 weeks away, but like, I want to do something special, because 50 episodes, that's quite a number, actually. 50 episodes. God dang it. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you around.